Hey, everybody, and welcome to another Bite-Size Branding live show. As always, we're super excited, especially when we have a guest in to join us. So I'll start off by introducing Simon. Say, hey, Simon, thank you for joining us.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And, oh, man, absolute pleasure. It's hard to get a hold of you and for you to get a hold of us. We're just so busy these days, but it's so exciting to have you on the show. It's something that I've really wanted to do, and I'm happy we finally locked it down and getting it done. And as always, Grant, joining me as my partner in crime on the show. Mate, thank you, Grant, for joining us. Do you want to intro the show?
Yeah, with pleasure. So basically, my name is Grant Tom. I'm the head fire starter of the marketing industry. And I love getting ideas started and booming. I like businesses that are trying to transform and change the marketplace and, of course, their destiny. One of the things that we talk about on the show is we come up with a subject with the view to unbundle, normally in 5 minutes or less. But now that we've got a guest, we give him 2 extra minutes to butt in and get his point of view across. And from that point of view, we've got 3 subjects that we're going to discuss in 3 different segments. And what we really want to do right now is just unbundle a little bit of Simon's industry and Simon's experience as to how we should be thinking in our businesses should we wish to go forward and grow them even more than what they are right now.
That is like the perfect segue. I knew there was going to be a perfect segue moment in this show. But Simon, I wanted to then flick it over to you so that people can get a better idea of what you do. And the credibility and kind of, I would even say authority that you've built in this space. Simon, tell us a little bit about Exit Advisory and what you guys do there.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll use the simple analogy. I think is probably the best way to describe it. You know how most people go out into business for themselves because they want freedom. They want the freedom for their time. They want to be their own boss. They want to make the kind of money they deserve. And they everyone wants that fairy tale. And then, of course, we all know the statistics about how many people actually fail to achieve that. And, I guess I come from a space, and our entire company is built on this philosophy that entrepreneurs are the ones who actually really change the world, right? They're the ones who see things that don't work in society and go, I am going to do something about that, usually at a great cost and risk to themselves, time, money, family, all sorts of things.
Stress, and relationships.
Yeah, right. There's a massive cost, yeah. And I guess the injustice that I see is that after taking all this risk and putting in all this effort and doing things to make a positive difference to the world, they run that marathon and then they're 100 meters from the finish line and they trip over and break the leg and they don't finish very well and they don't get the kind of rewards they deserve. And so our entire existence is built on this whole premise that we want people to end well. The company's called Exit Advisory Group. We talk to people about how to look at their end game, how to capture real value in their business and make sure they finish properly when it really, really counts. So really that's what we're about. We do business sales and acquisitions. We actually do the transactions, we find buyers, we do all that stuff. But a lot of our effort is really helping clients work out, how to build value, right? And it's not always, by the way, about just jacking up more revenue this year. Growth for the sake of growth is actually pointless. There's another thing that does that. It's called cancer. It's a horrible thing. If you're going to grow, have some purpose to it, right? And really, and I know I'm probably going over time already, but, really, I'm saying to people, think about what you want for your life, right? Before we start going on to business goals, what's important to you as a human? Because really your business should be just a vehicle for delivering you the life you want. So get clear on what you want for your life and then let's work backwards to make the business do what it should do.
Isn't that funny? Because that's the reason why people start the business in the first place, is to create that lifestyle that they want for themselves. And then they get caught up in the business itself and just think about, well, what is it that I'm growing or creating in the business? I forget to take care of themselves in the process.
And so when you hand over the baton, who do you hand over the baton to? Because not everyone who's about to receive the baton, like children, family members, don't always want to run the same race you're running.
Yeah, for sure. Look, and the funny thing is, we all exit one day. Whether you like it or not. And so you can either plan for this thing. Yeah, right. And so you're either going to sell the company or you're going to hand it over to somebody else to manage, or really there could be a bit of a hybrid combination of the two over a period of time. But, one of those things is going to happen. And so I guess in my mind is, if this thing's going to happen, we could probably shape what that looks like if we give it a bit of thought and put in a bit of effort.
Yeah, cool. Like, I don't want to go on too long because then we won't even get to the questions and we'll just end up having a chat for an hour, which I don't have a problem with, actually. I'm quite
We'll have to come back in 2 weeks' time.
So is that great?
We'll have to come back in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, let's just keep doing it. Look, I think, there's so many things that you've kind of brought up there, and there's so many things that are essential to building the value in a business. There's growing the customer base, the retention of customers, the structures and frameworks that operationally run the business, assets within the business, and then obviously Grant and I's passion, which is the branding side. And I think you see this in larger brands where a value starts to get tied to that. But what people never really appreciate is what that brand value is when they're a smaller business. And that's where we kind of wanted to kick it off. We wanted to kind of kick it off around when does a brand really start to build that reputation, and what does that value actually look like when it comes to the sale of a brand? So if you guys are ready, make a big deal. Look, clock time, ready?
Let's hit that
button. Awesome. Who wants to kick it off? Well,
let me start by something here, in the sense that we all got brands that we all recognize. Every day of our life, we touch 3,000 to 5,000 brands that we are part of our lifestyle. But we don't always know the brand story as to how they got about, to who they are and what they are, as to what they do for us. But at some point, somewhere, there's equity, there's shareholding, there's value, there's up for sale. So at what point is that badge, the brand, part of the value of the business? Simon?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. And I think it's like most things in life, it's a matter of perspective, because, hey, I love my business and my brand, and to me, it's worth a lot. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that Bob down the street's willing to pay me for that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, and that's part of the owner's dilemma, sort of getting back to, what we were talking about before. But I would just say, brands are worth what they can deliver in the market, right? How well is your brand recognized, and how well will it drive revenue and profit and income for you, right? So, ultimately, it's worth what it can produce. And if we're talking about someone acquiring your business, they're not actually buying the history. They're not buying the lovely story and the awards you won. They're buying what that business can deliver in the future. And so if your brand is known well enough and differentiated enough that you can point to it and say it gives us an advantage in the market, whether that's by generating more revenue or better margins, helps you close more deals. Well, that's a very, very material thing that you can start to put a dollar figure to.
Yeah. And does that take structuring within the business in order to begin to create that reputation or that positioning within the industry? How do you see that brands create something that they can capitalize on in that space?
Well, it's a bit hard. I mean, most people start their business and it's about their personal brand, right? And so I think where they struggle, first of all, is how do we transition from a personal brand to a business brand? Yeah. Excuse me. But what I'd say is it's a little bit hard to start out going, oh, we're going to build this massive brand. I mean, I don't think Coca-Cola went around thinking we're going to have a brand that is fundamentally our largest asset on our balance sheet, right? So I think for most people, it's about how do we get out there and make a difference in the world and then get paid for it? How do we start differentiating to other competitors in the market? And fundamentally, I think what it comes down to, Bernard, is how well do you deliver on your promise? Because the more you do that, the more customers will talk about you, the more they will tell other people, the more that your brand starts to mean something when people actually need to put their hand in their pocket.
And then would you say, sorry to Grant to jump in again, but I'm on a roll here. Then would you say planning for that earlier on so that you build a reputation around the brand that you're proud of is not essential, but a piece of that pie? Because we noticed that a lot of people jump into it later down the track, and now they're thinking about, well, how do we then move all these customers over to recognizing this new brand, rather than at the beginning making some critical decisions on how they want to be positioned and how they want to communicate, and then just going out confidently and building that reputation.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding a little bit woo-woo here, I mean, I think people who sit there at the beginning and going, I'm going to build a brand so it can be worth lots of money, they've probably missed the point. I think your brand is a representation of what you stand for, and this is nothing new here. I mean, Simon Sinek talks a lot about this sort of stuff, but I would be saying to people, what's your why? Why do you do what you do? Why does it make a difference to the world? Why should I care as a customer? And if you go out there and you have really good intentions of doing stuff and you're doing them for the right reason and you deliver on that promise, well then fundamentally your brand develops itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of thinking about how do I build a brand that's worth something, start thinking about what difference you make to the world and why that's important and communicate that. That is your brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's and to be honest, Bernard, and this is where guys like you come in and so important. I think people have a hard time articulating that, and how to package that and deliver it in a succinct message that doesn't make people want to jump off a cliff or something. Listening to them.
It's great that you say that, actually, and Grant, I'll throw it to you after this. But we're currently going through a transition and a pivot in our business, and we actually hired external people to do the same for us because we're too close to it to distill it, so even we understand the value of getting an outside perspective that is qualified to give you the direction that you need. Grant, man, I'll throw it to you. Do it.
Look, one of the things that in my experience that I've come across, especially with business owners, is that you've got to stop believing your own bullshit. Okay, you just got to. You got to start realizing faster that one day you're going to exit. So how are you going to exit? Do you want to exit in first class lounge, or do you want to exit in cattle class lounge? But at the end of the day, what you want to do when you're looking at your brand, you've got to work out the tricks and the hooks as to how do you get the people that you serve to be your advertisers to then broadcast the message. Because when you've got market share, you've got domination to then put a PE ratio of 3, 4, 5, 10, because the potential earnings of that your business is worth is so much more than if you were the best kept secret in the city.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's funny because I when we go and sell companies, we're presenting them to the market, and we measure stuff like this, by the way. So it is really, really important. But if I can package this in the simplest possible terms, you need to ask yourself what makes us different, and do our customers actually care? Yeah. Right? Because if you're just different, if you're different, but for around areas that the customers don't care about, that just makes you quirky and weird.
Very much so. Look, I think to bring this, I think it's a case of you've got to start with the end in mind, and I think at the end of the day, you've got to give it a big hit, but you got to start investing in your brand early. This thing of trying to fix your brand later, or it's if it's too late, it's too late. You've got to start right in the beginning.
Yeah, Grant, and I totally agree with that. Where I think people miss the point is that your brand is actually what helps you be successful. Now, your brand might not be known in the first place, but it doesn't mean it doesn't stand for something.
No, wrap it up. We always allow for a little bit of wrap it up. But you can see that the alarm is serious, It's like, stop. No, but wrap it up, actually. I really like the direction you're going with that, if you can remember where you kind of left off there.
Yeah, no, it's just, your brand is what makes you different, right? Your brand is what actually helps you succeed in the market. So, people, I think where people fail to invest in this area is because they're thinking about, I've got to spend all this, I've got to go and spend a lot of money on a fancy logo and no. Spend the money getting your message right. Spend your money getting somebody to help you really get clear on your why, which fundamentally is more about what you don't do rather than what you do sometimes. So, knowing what to say no to, and hey, we do this and we do this really, really, really well because it means something to us. This is our why. This is our purpose. Then get into the how you do it and actually what they get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Talk in those terms. And that will become the basis of your brand. It grows it organically, but it gives you an edge in the market, right?
Yeah, I think like one really important thing that has kind of come out of this is that a lot of people just try and jump to the getting into market, and they forget why they're doing it, why it matters to the customers that they're going after, and they hand over fist, start trying to close deals. and that's their focus, because revenue becomes the number one goal rather than anything else. And then what that means is that you end up with a very short lifespan with your customers, because even if you secure them, they're not bought into your brand. You're no different than the next guy that might come along and then try and spruik them the exact same thing. And they end up just hopping to supplier because there's no depth there. There's no meaning. There's no value or connection, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I'm probably getting that wrong, and I'm going to butcher it anyway. But, but you've all heard this expression in one way, shape or another. And that is, if you've got 6 hours to cut down a tree, spend 4 or 5 of those hours sharpening your axe, right? Like, don't just go in and start hacking away, because and this is what so many people get wrong with business. They go, oh, I've got to go out and make some money. I've got to pay these bills. I've got to do this. And all what they're really saying is it's me. Whereas if you actually sit down and go, who do I serve? How do I add value? What problem? Yeah. How do I actually help other people and help them in their world and make a difference to them? And is that a fundamentally deeper purpose there? If you can get clear on that and take that little bit of time to get that part right, guess what? The road is actually clear of obstacles. You'll chop that tree down in no time. It's take a moment, take a breath, line yourself up and do it properly. Then go to market and you'll give yourself your best chance of being successful.
Okay, that was the longest wrap up ever. All right, unacceptable, guys. Unacceptable. I could put a timer on for the wrap up. You know,
you knew me. You knew what you were getting into.
I shouldn't allow the space. I shouldn't allow the space for it. Awesome. Let's jump straight into the next question. This one's in regards to acquisitions. I think acquisitions is a big term on the tip of a lot of businesses' tongues right now. What they've found is that there's an opportunity to really get out there, harness other businesses and what they've created in the market in order for them to get rapid growth. What we wanted to look at is what type of guidance, or have you given guidance around what happens when a company is acquired and whether or not a business should absorb that brand? So like bring it into the head brand or the umbrella brand, or whether they should allow that brand to still trade as an independent brand. So I want to get your thoughts on that. Let me hit that clock if I can. Hey, got it.
Go.
Action.
Look, it's a really good question, and there is no one single answer that's right. I think it was George Bernard Shaw that said, for every complex problem, there's a simple answer that's wrong. and I love that. And I think, and I think it applies, right? Like it really depends on the situation. It depends on the companies involved. So let me talk about the principles. I think that are the difference between good integration and poor integration. Where I see things not work well, or where value is diminished, is where people they make acquisitions and they're like, right, you need to roll your brand into ours, and it's because they've got massive egos and they kind of like, I want to be seen as, or we want to be seen as the heroes, and we're dominating, and we bought you, and you'll fold into us, and it's ego driven, and look, that happens. Where you see it really well is a lot of the sort of smarts that sit behind this is saying, number one, when you do an acquisition, rule number one is do no harm. Don't damage the asset that you are acquiring. And that means, yes, you'll probably have integration plans. I've seen people go, well, we're going to have all this integration wrapped up in 3 months. And I'm like, mate, you'll have issues in 3 years still. Like, especially when the biggest business is a bit bigger. So I think the thing is, it's thinking about, well, you're buying this business for a reason. There is a brand there. They have a purpose. They have a why. They have clients who've bought that brand. How do you facilitate a transition where you preserve value and hopefully you leverage that value? And so I've seen companies absorb brands into themselves. I've seen acquisitions happen where in the end they've gone with the brand they bought. They've just gone, it's just cleaner, it's better. And I tell you what, if you can get to that sort of scenario, I can tell you the valuation on a business like that is going to be a lot higher than the other way around.
Wow. So we actually worked with a telco once and did something similar to that, where they had acquired multiple brands, many of them. We tried to go for a new brand name, which we thought was the best for their position, but in the end, they couldn't make a decision. And they ended up rolling up into one brand that everybody was like the most passionate about. And we love that as an end result, because I think one of the big things that I see around the acquisition space is culture fit. You buy a
Yes.
brand or a business for the business. But you don't buy it because you necessarily know what the culture is. And then all of a sudden you try and take these two brands and go, smash, let's just bring them together. All you guys, you now work together. You're one team. Awesome, let's do this. I'm like, mate, these people don't know each other. Nor did this, like, Anne did not know she was going to be working for X company when she signed up with B company, you know? And that's what I often see. And then I hate it when somebody acquires and then takes apart. That is the worst. I'm like, why even acquire, mate? What did you buy? A database? Like, really? The values in the people work with that brand. They retain these customers because they love the people. They love the brand. The brand stood for something. I never understand that strategy. I find it really I
find that in acquisitions, it's 9 times out of 10 the customer is overlooked. So the customer doesn't understand why someone has bought someone else out. Yeah. They don't understand what the value is by you joining forces. They don't understand what the value is to them as to why they need to stay loyal and continue to buy from you. And so 9 times out of 10 from acquisition, as much as there's much brand and positiveness and growth and value, but at the end of the day, the customer is overlooked 9 times out of 10 because they don't understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, we run something called a re-engagement campaign. So that's where we do create a campaign all focused on introducing your current customers to the new brand that's being created and letting your current customers know about what's happening with the brand. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They just acquire and they do what they want with that brand, whether that's integrate or take it apart or whatever. We find that because that's what we told them. We're like, attrition is huge at this point because now you've just let everybody know something is changing. What you should let them know is how much this is going to, like how much value this is going to bring to them. And a lot of people do forget to do that.
Yeah, look,
this is a fine time for me to bring my word in. Edutainment. It's about educating and entertaining at the same time to build brands, to enhance value, and at the end of the day, get the customer to be on board with the view of the transition of what the brand acquisition was all about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think you've got, if you acquire another business, one would think that there's an alignment there in terms of culture, values, their why, their purpose, like this, you'd be looking for synergies in most acquisitions. And so I think if you're going to communicate that to customers and staff, frankly, you've got to be talking about why 1 + 1 = 3 and why and how that 3 is delivering more value to them as well, right? It's, ultimately that's people, for good or better or worse, they'll be thinking, how does this impact me in my world? That's it.
Yeah. And if they can't figure it out, they're likely just to go somewhere else because they're like,
totally. Yeah. And here's another little phrase that I think everybody needs to take away is, in the absence of clear communication, the human brain instinctively fills the void with the worst possible case scenario. Every time without fail. So if you don't control the message, if you don't spell it out and put it in their terms and make it really, really clear for them, it's highly likely you have completely missed the point and you will scare them off.
Yeah.
Look, it's also, when a business wants to grow, it's about acquiring that market share because it's easier to buy it than it is to grow it. But at the same time, that market share that you bring on board doesn't understand your culture and your value as to why you're on. And when you start changing pots and pans, you lose market share. So therefore, your investment is going south. So I think what's important is to understand that when you're doing an acquisition, you've got to make sure that you think in a 3-tier level as to how are you going to bring about slowly and progressively rather than quick and fast just because you think you're big and great.
Yeah. Yeah. At that point, it's actually not about you, right? It's about them.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
That whole deal, you're trying to acquire more customers, and in the whole process, you're like, what customers?
Yeah, you're burning them along the way, yeah.
I just want your debt.
Well, I want to create some of my own.
Hey, look at that.
That was good timing, guys. I'm proud of you all.
Yeah. Take 2 was pretty good. Let's see for take 3.
Yeah, awesome. I'm loving this show. This is spectacular. Simon, I think this is like the 2nd or 3rd time we've done something like this, a little interview style thing. And I absolutely love it. Every time we talk to you, it just gets more and more in depth, more and more insightful. And I always walk away going, damn, like, just want to work with this guy even more, you know?
Oh,
so
you're too kind. I'm the same, mate. Absolutely back at you, mate. I always enjoy working with you. And Grant, lovely to meet you too. So
Absolutely, Simon.
So Grant is essentially part of the team now. He's representing us down in Melbourne. So he's
awesome.
our man on the ground in Melbourne. Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Oh, well, I'll be down in Melbourne at some stage, Grant, and I'll have to come and see you. But that's probably not why people are listening. So I'll.
No, that's all right. We usually come to COVID capital. Awesome. Let's jump into the last question. Then we can have a little chit chat and head off to our Friday night drinks or other social type things that people do. So the last question we have for you is, I guess, a bit more of an open-ended question and something that you can give us a lot more insight on, I guess, around the space itself in this buy, sell, acquisition space. The question is more general about when do you sell a business and what is the process that people go through? Oh, I should hit this clock. It's all right, go ahead.
Let me just elaborate a little bit more there. I think.
Sure. Do you want me to pause it for you, Grant? There you go. Elaborate away.
Right, let's go. Okay, so basically, if you let's say, for example, you're running a business and you want to sell it, and say, for example, you're in year 3 and you want to sell the business, you don't just sell it immediately. You've got to work out when is the right time, because you know it still will take time to sell the business. So that's the more the point. When do you decide, and how much time do you allow for the sale to go through?
Yeah. Look, there's actually a whole bunch of stuff here to sort of unpack, but I think every business owner needs to look at this on multiple levels, right? There's multiple factors here that are going to impact your potential transaction. And when we say impacted, I mean, really, brass tacks here is it's financial. You know, how much financially will it impact you? There's also a timing element. And there's also a bit of a legacy element in terms of how, you know, after you've left the room, how are people going to talk about you, and does that even matter to you, right? So I think, you know, when you think about financial and timing sort of objectives, you've got this kind of macro perspective of what is going on globally, you know, across all markets, you know, everything that's going on. You've then got even a national layer, what's going on in your country. You've then got an industry layer, what is happening in your specific market and world. And then there's the organizational level, and then there's the people level, right? And you as an individual as a part of that. So there are factors at each one of those tiers, if you like, that will have an impact on the potential value of your company and really when you should go to market, how long you may have to hang around after you've done a transaction. So lots and lots of variables. What I will say to people is that the largest and most dominating factor of all of those is the macro environment, right? Like you had a business that was an events business last year or 2 years ago, year and a half ago. You might have been kicking goals and on this, you know, double-digit CAGRs for the last 5 years, blah, 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 blah. World changed. Boom, you don't have a business anymore. You know, that's it, all right? So I just sort of see it that the big macro environment, it's like these big pistons pounding in and out, and as they move, they create windows of opportunity for businesses to fill and obviously be successful by solving problems. So macro environments, and then of course you drill down, and sometimes national events and certainly industry events will play a part. So everybody knows business goes in cycles, right? There's these waves up and down and up and down, and you know, I don't know if you're getting my cool hand movements here, but you know, roll with me.
Parts of it.
You know, I just sort of think, you know, when I look at what's happened over the last couple of years, you know, especially with COVID, we've seen an absolute ton of buyers come out of the woodwork in the last 12 months. You know, there's a lot of activity. And interestingly, a lot of the people who were thinking of selling, even, you know, especially if they had a good business, kind of went, oh, uncertainty, I don't want to go to market. I'm on the sidelines. I don't need to do anything, so I won't do anything. Completely reasonable approach. If you don't have to do anything, sometimes doing nothing is the best decision. However, the buyers are all there. There have been more buyers than sellers. That to me says actually it's a seller's market. So if you've got lots of buyers out there all jockeying for a bit of position, well, that tells me I might even be thinking, oh, look, I'm kind of interested in selling, but I don't really want to sell for another couple of years. Well, okay, but your business might be worth more today than it is in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So maybe you should be selling because it's actually the best time to sell. So, I think, people who can step back and be objective like that, and I think, they're the ones who actually capture the most value, right? Because they can be objective. I think probably what comes into it, though, and this is very normal as well, is that a lot of people will get caught up in some of the personal, emotional stuff where, and let's be honest, a lot of that comes down to I pour so much of my life into this business. If I sold it tomorrow, what would I do with my time? Who am I as a person? How do I value myself? So therein lies the lesson, right? Like, don't align your sense of personal self-worth to your business. You are not your business. You are you, and your business is an asset to deliver you the life you want, right? So we're coming full circle here. But so in my mind, when do you sell your business? I think you've got to sort of step back and look at the big moving pieces. None of us with our businesses can create a market on our own. We are a part of the market. So don't try to bend the market to your will, because you will break. Right?
That's awesome.
Think of it on those terms. What can you do to improve your environment and improve your opportunities? Well, the thing is, start working on it now. Don't wait until somebody taps you on the shoulder and goes, oh, we're interested in buying you. And then you go, oh, shit, someone's coming over for morning tea. I better clean the house quickly.
Yeah.
Get your house in order, right?
Yeah.
Start thinking about building your company as if you are going to sell it one day. And even if you don't want to sell it, you want to hand it down to the kids or someone else, trust me, no one wants to move into your house and find dirty laundry everywhere. They want to come into a nice clean house and go, oh, look, this place looks like it's been really well kept. So, build it like you're going to sell it. Prepare everything like you're going to have unexpected guests. And the more you do that, the better positioned you are to capture value.
And that is something that people can engage you for, right? Like a level of consulting to help them get their perspective in the right place, to gear themselves up for one day selling, whether it's today or 10 years from now. Get all the pieces in the right place so that when somebody knocks on their door or it's ready to give it over to the kids, you give them a clean house.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think, coming back to what you said before, Bernard, even about branding and stuff like that, like often people are too close to it to be able to see what needs to be done. We often sort of joke about, or not joke, but point out the fact that it's not that we've got all the answers. You've got the answers for your business. It's just that we've got the right questions and we know how to ask them and when to ask them and what order to ask them to get the right answers out of you. And so, I think, yes, engaging someone to help you prepare all that stuff, absolutely. Understanding what's important, what are the drivers, which levers to pull first, where to put your time and focus. Because bottom line, business exists because there is a shortage of resources that need to be applied to solve lots of problems. So it's the same thing for all of us. You've got 101 things to work on, but actually if you've got 100 priorities, you've got no priorities. What are the top 2 or 3 things you should be focused on to get value?
That was awesome. I'd love to throw in actually a couple little asides actually that came up when you were speaking just then. One of them being that I was working with somebody just recently whose brand wanted to get into Chemist Warehouse, and Chemist Warehouse came. They wanted to distribute their product through Chemist Warehouse.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And Chemist Warehouse went back to them and said, "This with your logo, this with your website, this with your marketing collateral, this with your tighten all that up, and we'll sell you." And I think essentially what they were saying is that our reputation hinges on the reputation of the brands that we bring in. If you don't look reputable, we're not going to put you on our shelves. That's such an interesting position, because people usually take those kind of things and they put them right at the back. But then there's a powerhouse like Chemist Warehouse who's actually saying, yeah, but that's the only way people know you. And when you're in our shop, the only way they know you is by what they see. And if what you see doesn't represent what you're trying to sell, then we can't sell it. And then therefore there's no value.
I think there's a lot to do with self-belief. There's a lot of people don't believe in their own value. So for example, they're running a business, it's their little baby, they're too scared that someone else can do and hold the same standard as what they've got. Until such time you say, well, it's up for sale. Whoa, does someone really want to buy me? Is it really that good? And it's that whole weakness that starts to come forward. And I think you're quite right, Simon. It's about, you've got to get yourself, your house in order, got to be ready. If you're selling every single day, you sell, but you must be ready to sell the business. Because if someone offers you great value, you must be ready to let it go. It's the same as your house. If someone came in and offered you a ridiculous amount of money for your house, there's nothing to think about. You don't do. Because,
And I noticed a ton of alignment with property investing.
yeah,
With what you said about growing your business. Property investing, the first time I spoke to somebody about property investing, he said the exact same thing. He said, don't get attached to this house. You're never going to live there. So don't worry about what this looks like, what the tiles are like, it doesn't matter. You don't live there. Just get the house on the market so it can start building revenue. And I think that's a very similar thing with when you're looking at selling the business. Get it done right, get it built right, and let it be valued by the market. Create the value in the market. You can't sit there kind of pulling it apart, or you can't create something that is lacking in value and then expect to hand over fist to make it something valuable to people.
correct.
Yeah.
100%.
And if I can add to that, Bernard, too, I'd just say to people, I think, we said before, no decision is actually a decision. Like doing nothing is a decision. And I think most people get sort of scared into making no decision because they, like a lot of things, they kind of walk up to the edge of a cliff, they look over and go, oh, geez, whoa, oh, I'm not ready for this. That was a bit scary. And I think whether they're, you look at stuff like brand and investing in your marketing and getting that stuff right, I think a lot of people hesitate because they go, oh, my goodness, this looks like it's going to be bigger than Ben-Hur and I don't know what to do and I've got all these questions in my head I can't answer. And yes, because what you're doing is you're looking over this cliff, or I'll flip the case because I love going skiing with my kids. And the first time they look up the mountain, they go, oh, my God, and it's like, stop looking down the whole mountain and just look at the 3 feet in front of you. That's actually what you need to do. And so with branding, you don't think you need to suddenly, become Nike or Coca-Cola overnight.
Yeah.
You break it down into steps that are manageable that you can then start to recognize and realize some value on. You get comfortable at that next level and then you move up again.
And it's great that you bring up those brands, because those brands didn't pop up overnight. In fact, there are a very small number of Facebook-like brands out there that, in a very short period of time became these mega brands. But most of them took a lifetime to achieve what they've achieved. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and become Coca-Cola. It's just not going to happen. But you can't make the decision based on, well, I'm not going to be Coca-Cola tomorrow, so I'll do nothing instead. That doesn't even make sense. You'll never become Coca-Cola if you do nothing instead.
I think the bottom line.
Sorry,
I think as a business owner, I think, I would rather be part of something, 10% of something great than 100% of something average. And sometimes you just got to let go.
Your customers.
Yeah, you just got to let go your value and your equity for leverage with the view to play in bigger pools. Therefore, you can be a dominant player, because you only got one life and you're going to exit. So exit the best way you can.
Yeah, and look, and to that, I'd also say, I think people let perfection be the enemy of progress.
Correct.
Oh my God, it's not. If I don't know how to answer every single conceivable question, I don't want to do it because I'm scared about the risk, or I'm scared about failing, or I'm scared about how whatever it is. Well, no. Like the first people who climbed mountains and went over the into the bush, they didn't know where they were going. They didn't have a map. They walked through the bush and they worked it out as they went, but they were making progress and they were discovering and they were learning. And that experience pays a lot of dividends as you continue on your journey.
Yes, I think that is.
You don't get every deal over the table, but every time you've applied and tried and you failed, you will learn. And that makes success.
For sure.
I think that's a great message to walk away at the end of this show, is that there are a lot of people that we do speak to that are looking for the perfect proposal that fits into their exact little makeup exactly perfectly, and that they know the execution is going to be exactly perfect, and then they end up doing nothing. Or they end up waiting a year once now the industry has moved on, or that opportunity has now moved on, or the opportunity has withered, and now they want to get into the game, and now they are resource less as well. So they don't have the finances, they don't have the cash flow, they don't have. But the whole time when you were at your best, and this is what happens the most in our industry, is that people come to us when they're at their worst. They're like, oh shit, we're running out of sales. People aren't coming to us. They're not buying. We're not selling to the right people. Help us. And we're like, well, when you were killing it, when you were making the money, where was the money invested in planning the next stage, in building the future-proofing the business, harnessing the data, leveraging your positioning, all that kind of stuff. They got caught up in the excitement of it. They took advantage of this sudden growth that they had, and they got comfortable with it. And now that shit's hitting the fan, they want to spend no money to get themselves as much business as possible. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work.
They want it free, they want it quick, and they want it great.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Quick and great. Yep. They always come together.
And free.
Awesome, guys.
Awesome. Well, Simon, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. I think in the future, we'll definitely get you on for, what am I saying? I think we're definitely going to get you on for another show down the track, maybe at the end of the year for a little Christmas wrap up. Maybe we'll get everyone, if we could get all the guests on one mega show, how crazy would that be? Grant, as always, man, thank you so much for joining us. All the listeners, thank you
Simon,
for joining.
Reaching out with you and just interacting with you. Fantastic points of view. Very, very important points of view. So thank you for sharing. Great to have you on the show.
Oh, look,
awesome,
my pleasure.
guys.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to the both of you. For everyone that's listening, please like, comment, share, and do pop your questions in the post. And if you do have an awesome guest like Simon, who's over this side, that you would like us to bring on the show and drill, hopefully they won't be as agreeable and intelligible as Simon, because that just makes it too easy for everyone. And
I can come back after I've had a few wines if you like.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Another show 2 hours from now. Everyone, please do share that information and share those guests. We love talking to everyone and unbundling a bunch of different subjects. Enjoy your Fridays. Stay safe this weekend, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Cheers, everyone. Goodbye.
See you later, mate. Thanks a lot.